trend, that is the time of the people. We cannot go against that. Nobody can go against that. So that is why images like this, maybe a while ago, there was a lot of people, perhaps a couple of months ago, saying like, oh, would that actually become possible? Would cryptocurrency actually be the next currency? Is that true? Would it really be realized? A lot of people ask this question, but now we've already come to the point in time where we have to accept it, no longer question it. But still, even at this point, a lot of people, I'm not talking about a small amount of people, a lot of people are still trying to go against cryptocurrency, even though the times have changed. So we call it the Bible of, oh, he said, the illiteracy of the modern man, it doesn't mean somebody who cannot read or write. An illiterate modern man means a person who is not able to accept new information from the civilization. That is the modern illiteracy. It's basically times are changing, but you are not changing. But really, the way that our times are changing is so fast. Things are changing way too fast, especially during COVID. And even think about our lives after COVID-19. I feel like with the 1 to 2 year progress that our times have is basically the 10 years of progress that we've seen before. And these changes are happening fast. So that means we also have to change quickly and adapt to this situation. So let's ask the question, why is Bitcoin out here? Why is there cryptocurrency? Why did it come out? It's because it's better in some sort of way than the currencies that we use before. For example, let's say the heavy coins that we had, it was too heavy to carry. So we did paper money. So paper money was easier to carry, but even paper money wasn't easiest or most convenient to carry around. So we made credit cards that we can literally bring unlimited amount of monies in a plastic card. So can you accept that the fact that new currencies always come out when there's something more convenient and there's something to be developed to the next point? So what's wrong with the current form of money that we use? Centralization. It's based on a central network. Oh, somebody's using hard words. Oh, good job. What's wrong with having a centralized model? Somebody in the audience member saying, it's too slow of a supply. You were right about the centralized point. It's like the central bank is able to create the amount of money whenever and however much they want at any point in time. Let's say back in the day, the dollar was actually not a fiat money, but it was linked as a promissory note to the amount of gold that is stored at its facility. That facility is now what we call a bank. And every type of dollar that I used was a promissory note linked to the exact amount of gold that is being reserved. So that's why it was a gold reserve promissory note. And that was the origins of a dollar. So that's why you were basically carrying out a paper that had a promissory note to represent the value of the gold that you have reserved at the bank that was too heavy to carry around. So, however, President Nixon, to win during the war in Vietnam, he needed more money. And to do that, he basically broke that form and made it into fiat money that is no longer in a certified form of currency tied to a bank system of gold reserve, but a form of a central bank where the country promises the value of the money. So then after that one, before that point, the entire world was based on this idea of dollar to gold, but when that dollar to gold was decoupled, and that is why after, especially the Lehman Brothers crash, when a lot of dollars were printed, what happened to the value of the US dollar? It crashed along as well. So let's talk about currency, though, this dollar that is. First, it needs to have the form of transitional value and conserved value. This value, but what if this value keeps going down? So then this conserved value, the value that you keep an asset, becomes no longer an equity or liquid asset that you want to own because the government keeps printing the US dollar. So a lot of people, as they saw, especially during COVID, that inflations would be imminent, they needed a new methodology of currency that the value can be better preserved than the US dollar. And that became the basis of Bitcoin. Okay. Uh, to 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 know cryptocurrency, you have to understand gold.
디지털. 왜 진짜 돈, 디지털 돈이라고? 예, 금은 진짜 돈이라고 그랬잖아요. 그런데 갖고 다니기
So I told you, big cryptocurrency is like digital gold. But let's think about gold. It's actually really hard to carry gold around to use as a currency. It's too heavy. You can't break it down into smaller pieces easily. And those shortcomings of gold, Bitcoin completely covers all those shortfalls of it. It has a finite amount. There's a specific amount of Bitcoin available, just like how there's a specific amount of gold in the world. But you can so easily transact in Bitcoin. You can send all across the world without any heavy infrastructure costs. It has Bitcoin has all the positives of what gold has, but it has none of the shortfalls of gold. That is why Bitcoin has become the new gold. And who certified this information? What was the point of when was the point that was certified? It was the COVID economy. Because during COVID economy, we had to make the economy a little bit more stable and relaxed. Normally, what would happen is each country will basically print more and more money and spread it out. But if you keep printing more money and put it out into circulation, so if you keep creating the amount of dollar or any type of currency, what happens to the value of that currency? It goes down. So because the value of the currency that I own keeps going down, what do people do to maintain their assets? They move that asset into a different form that can maintain in a form that can be maintained its value. And so what do people do? They couldn't trust government bonds, they couldn't trust US dollars. And so where did they go to? To cryptocurrency. Do you know what the current price of Bitcoin was during COVID-19? It went up to 67,000 US dollars, while the price of gold actually went down. What's the reason for that? As I told you, it's because the principles of supply and demand is exactly the same. The supply, back in the day, a lot more gold was being mined, but now the amount of gold that is being mined is actually dropping. It's not just about maybe 4 times the size of a football stadium, and that is in circulation right now. And perhaps the final one, the fifth stadium, is right now still unmined underneath the Earth's core, but there's still more and more people who look for gold because why? It's a symbol of wealth and it is a symbol of money. So that's why throughout the history, the price of gold went up. But there's also one more reason the value of gold went up is because the value of the dollar or the money to buy the gold also went down. But what about Bitcoin? So in the very beginning, you could mine 50 Bitcoins, even just a very simple computer. But nowadays, you need a super computer just to mine a little bit of Bitcoin. So it's much harder to mine the Bitcoin because the mining rate keeps dropping. Every 4 years, that amount goes through a halving. So it was 50 blocks 14 years ago. This halving happens every time a specific amount of Bitcoin. So from 50 to 25, 25 to 12.5, and right now 6.5, and maybe in a couple of years, it's only going to be 3 Bitcoin. And after that, only 1.25. And by 2030, out of the full amount of Bitcoin that can be mined, 99.9% of Bitcoin will be fully mined by 2030. So it has the same principles of gold as Bitcoin has, but because it can have this form of principle of supply and demand, the price of Bitcoin keeps going up. So then why does the value of money, our fiat money, keeps going down while more and more people are interested in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin? Do you know what one country in the world that actually accepted Bitcoin as a form of legal tender? El Salvador did. Yesterday from the news, there was news that that
활동하는 나라가
one of
있어요.
its neighboring countries will also accept Bitcoin as legal tender. Honduras.
베네수엘라는요. 지금
Venezuela.
인플레이션이 어마어마해요.
Inflation in Venezuela is
빵을
absolutely
하나 먹고 뭘
insane.
하나
To
먹으려면
buy just a
돈이
piece of
없어요.
bread, you basically need a
그러니까 돈이 갈
handful
수가
of
없어요.
money because the
그래서
value of money is
베네수엘라
completely
대통령이
next to none.
앞으로
So, what does he want to
비트코인을
do? He wants to
법정화폐로
make
채택하겠다.
Bitcoin as a legal
IMF도
tender.
반대를 했고요.
Even
국민들이
IMF, the
많은
International
국민들이
Monetary Fund organization, said no to this. Even the people said no, but
어떤
they
일이냐?
made it happen
처음에
anyways.
비트코인을 법정화폐로 채택을 하면서 전 국민한테
So,
일정 부분의
to the,
비트코인을 나눠줬어요.
it basically distributed a specific amount of Bitcoin to everybody in the country. That's the
한
type
달
of.
전에
So then a month
한 달
ago,
전에
a
1
month ago,
갤론의 가스
1 gallon of gas,
휘발유를 넣으려면
to put 1 gallon
가령
of gas,
100불이
you needed,
필요했는데
let's say,
한 달
$100.
후에는
But a month
인플레이션에 의해서
later, because of inflation,
110달러가
you need
틀렸다.
$110 to
이게
fill up a tank of gas.
인플레이션이잖아요.
This is what
지금
inflation is.
반면에
But on
한 달
contrary,
전에는 1
a month
갤런의
ago, in
휘발유를
to
사는데
buy 1 gallon of tank gas,
0.1비트의
I needed
비트코인이 필요했는데
zero point
한 달
0.1
이후에
bit.
1 갤론의 휘발유를
But
사는데
to buy the same amount of gas later,
0.1비트가
I
아닌
needed less, 0.09 bit. Why? Because the price, the value of Bitcoin went up.
즉
So then,
모든 화폐의 문제점은
the problem about all the fiat money right now is inflation.
빠지더라도
Even if COVID ends from now on, inflation will continue to rise. So, was there inflation before COVID? Yes, it was about 2% though before COVID. But after COVID, it's going to be a much higher percentage because the value of money will continuously drop. So a lot of people will try to move their assets into something of a safer form. And out of that, one of a certified way to do so is blockchains, Bitcoin, and more of us will do so. So you to understand Bitcoin, you have to understand gold, and you need to understand Bitcoin to understand KOK coin. It's no longer a token; it's a coin, and we can understand this by understanding the three golds right here. And what is this? Why should we know that? Because we love blockchain. Because Bitcoin, there's almost no technology behind, blockchain technology behind this one. But the coin that comes out nowadays is really explaining the basis of the blockchain. It really has its principles lying deeply in the technology of blockchain while keeping the same principles of supply and demand that gold had, that Bitcoin had. And that's why this is what all the cryptocurrency makers right now are dreaming of. But did you know their hopes and their dreams, are there places that actually achieved their dreams? No, so far none. This is probably the trial phase, perhaps growth pains of cryptocurrency world. What is the greatest invention of man? What do we call it? The internet, isn't it? Back in the day, it was fire. But nowadays, in our modern world, we say internet was the greatest invention. But even internet, when it was first founded back in the early 90s, a lot of people were negative against it. It's like, oh, this makes no sense. But now that has been over 10 years since it came out, there's still people against this idea of the internet. But all technology is always the same story. Like the smartphone that you guys utilize nowadays, we call it IoT, Internet of Things. And let's go here. And it's been 15 years since we have this technology in our hands. And now it's being utilized in our daily lives. All the technologies until today had this exact same point of having these trial and error and grow pains. And in that process, there's always some scammers and fraudulent players to always take advantage of the changes and scam and fraud a lot of people. Like, oh, these type of coins will become the next biggest coin. Why don't you buy this? Why don't you buy that? Is there any other coin here that you actually succeeded on with that kind of, and in that kind of environment 2.5 years ago, KOK was one of its player who was born 2.5 years ago and had to play amongst that. You can imagine the hardship that was. I'm going to give you all the logistical data from today, all the objective data. So I'm going to try to explain to you so that you can all